Hello and welcome to the Humanities YouTube channel. I'm Mr. Cross and we're going to be looking today at the Living Under Nazi Rule course. The start of the course, you have to learn about Nazi ideology. This is going to be really important as the course goes on because a lot of the things that happen from 1933 onwards are all based around some of these Nazi ideologies, their ideas. So to start off with, what we're going to look at is the context of those ideas, where those ideas came from. Now, one of the first events that we're going to look at, one of the most important events, was the Treaty of Versailles. This happened in 1919. Now, this event happened straight after the First World War. It was an extremely harsh peace treaty. They lost approximately 13% of their land, and this included areas such as Poland. The army was reduced to 100,000 men, which seems like a lot, but in the context of the day it really wasn't. They weren't allowed any tanks. They were limited to 6 battleships. If that wasn't enough, they had to pay money which was called reparations to the accord of £6.6 billion, and if that wasn't enough, they were forced to take the blame for the war. So, moving on. 1919 to 1929 was quite an interesting period. While you don't need to know it for the course, there are certain things that did happen that will be relevant to you. So the period starts off with, after 1919, as you'd expect, after the defeat of the war, the harsh Treaty of Versailles terms, you see a growth in extremist groups. Now, what I mean by that is groups in the country, political groups, on the right wing and the left wing, with very extreme views. One of the groups that rises in this period are Marxist and communist groups, and there is a huge fear of these groups because of what had happened in 1919 in Russia, where there had been a huge revolution. Now, the people who were especially scared in this period were the rich, the middle classes and business owners, because they had the most to lose if communism was successful. Because the basic idea of communism is that wealth is shared. There is more to it than that, but for this purpose, that's all we really need to know. In this period, due to this, there are several uprisings, both on the left and the right. Now, moving on, 1929 to 1933. So, during the 1920s, although there is unrest, things do seem to be getting a little bit better. Some people call that period the Golden Twenties. But in 1929, things go horribly wrong in a worldwide event called the Wall Street crash. And this has a huge impact on Germany. It leads to a rise in unemployment, wages go down, and people are extremely angry. And they're looking for someone to blame, a scapegoat. And the people that they blame are the government, that same government that signed the peace treaty that people hated. That same government is now being blamed for the economic crisis of this period. Okay, so that's a little bit about the context. Next, we're going to look at one of the key ideologies, one of the Nazis' key ideas, which was the scrapping of the Treaty of Versailles. So remember, the Treaty of Versailles left Germany with less lands, a reduced army, £6.6 billion in reparations, and they were having to take the blame for the war. So Adolf Hitler and the Nazis thought that this was really unfair, and they probably thought this is going to be something that is going to really appeal to the German public. So they decided to ignore it. They told the people that if they got into power, they would ignore it, they would build the army back up, and they would take back areas that were taken from them, for example, like Poland. In other words, they would tear up the Treaty of Versailles. The next ideology that we're going to look at is something called Arbeit und Brot. This is a German phrase and it means work and bread. Remember, again, this is a period after the Wall Street crash. People are blaming the government. There are people out of work. There are people hungry. So again, this is going to be something that is going to really appeal to many Germans. They promised that every German would get work and bread, and if they were to come to power, the whole of Germany would be united and content. The next ideology we're going to look at is destroying Marxism. So, just like I said earlier, there was a revolution in Russia in 1917. And this really scared many Germans because there was a lot of bloodshed and a lot of people, particularly the middle classes, the upper classes, those with money, those with businesses, they lost a lot. So what the Nazis did was they said that they would destroy it, they would get rid of it. They were quite aggressive in that. What they also did was insinuated, well, more than insinuated actually, made a direct connection between Marxism and Jews. Now this really wasn't true, but in terms of being able to use propaganda, they would then be able to connect the Jews and Marxism together, and then you've got one evil enemy instead of two. And they told the German public that if the Nazis get to power, they would stop Marxism and they would avoid a revolution. So, as well as destroying Marxism, they also promised to subdue the Jews. Okay? Now, you might be wondering why Adolf Hitler and the Nazi Party hated the Jews so much. Well, this is quite a complicated question, but we'll just touch the surface of this right now. They believed that Jewish people were the ubermenchen. They believed that they were subhuman. Now, I've put a little picture there of Danny Drinkwater's shirt. He's just left Leicester City and I'm not very happy about it. So I've just put that as a little reminder to me about subhuman, okay? I don't really think he's subhuman, but I'll remember it better, I think, if I put that shirt just there. And the Untermenschen, the subhuman Jewish population, were blamed for what happened in 1918 and the signing of the peace treaty, and also blamed for the economic crisis of 1929 caused by the Wall Street crash. Again, there really isn't much truth in these claims, but this is what the Nazis were saying to persuade people to get on their side. They also, like I said before, connected Jews to communists or Marxists. And they said that they were plotting a revolution, that they were money grabbers, and that they needed to be subdued. The next ideology that we're going to look at is called Lebensraum. Again, another German phrase, and this means living space. Okay? Now, Hitler developed this idea between 1921 and 1925. A famous geographer at the time had come up with this idea of Lebensraum. It wasn't Hitler's idea, and his name was Ratzel. And what he argued, and then what Hitler took on board, was that to have a healthy population, you needed space, you needed a living space. And Hitler believed that that space would be found in the East specifically. And they believed that in this space in the East, if they took the lands of Russia, of Poland, that they would be able to grow food there and provide for the German population. They believed that the people that were living in the East already, the Slavs, were an inferior race, that they weren't as strong and they didn't deserve that land in the East. And they believed the Aryan race, and we'll come to what Aryan really means in a minute, that they deserved to take and populate the East. This was a key belief of Adolf Hitler, and it can be found, as well as many of the others, to be fair, in Mein Kampf, which was his book called, which can be translated as My Struggle. Okay, moving on to Aryan supremacy. So he said that Lebensraum, living space, was for the deserving, and the people that deserved it were the Aryan race. And while the Jews were seen as the ubermenchen, the Germans, the pure Germans, as they saw it, were called the ubermenchen, superhuman. Okay, they saw the people living in Russia as the dung people, and that's what they referred to them as, and that the ubermenchen, the superhumans, deserved to populate the East. Now, there's a little bit of confusion here with some students that they believe that all Aryans are blonde-haired and blue-eyed. Now, that isn't an ideal to a degree, but you could be an Aryan really if you just had Northern Europe, a European heritage, that you were from that area and you could trace your roots back in this area. Because remember, Adolf Hitler wasn't blonde-haired and blue-eyed, but he would have seen himself as an Aryan because his heritage, where he was from, was in Northern Europe. So coming on to the last ideology we're going to look at, and that is nationalism. And nationalism was something that was happening all over Europe. It wasn't just in Germany. But the Nazi Party really were a nationalist organisation, and they believed that Germany should be run by Germans, pure Germans, ubermenchen, for Germans. And they wanted to limit foreign influence. So we've gone through quite a few ideologies there. Not all of them, but they're some of the key ideologies that you'll need to know at the start of this course, that will be referred to later on in this course. So what you can do now is go away. Don't just watch this and be passive. What you need to do is go away and produce your own version of this mind map, or produce revision cards from this mind map. Include your own pictures, include your own key terms, and really get to grips with this Nazi ideology, because if you get this, it really will help you with the rest of the course. Okay, well, I hope you got something from this, and that you find it useful. Thank you very much.